Welcome to the Challenge Chronicles. I'm Devin Jordan. I'm with Trace Armstrong and no Rob McIntyre. We're here to talk about Survivor Season 42, Episode 4. If you'd like to become a patron and listen to all of our bonus content on the challenge, you can go to patreon.com/the Challenge Chronicles and subscribe for $4 per month. We are here talking about Survivor today. Trace really wanted to do this, so it seemed like a good thing to put out on the public feed. Who knows how often we'll actually do this, but we thought we'd do it and just give it a go and see how it goes. Trace, what did you think of episode 4?
Well, before we go to episode 4, I will say this. I liked episode 4 a lot, like a lot liked it. I think this season of Survivor so far is going to turn into one of those like top 10 type seasons, maybe top 15, depending on how the rest of the season plays out. As good as Survivor 41 was, and I really liked Survivor 41, I think 42's cast is better. And I think the people playing the game are wildly different. You know, like I felt like on 41, there was a lot of schemers, but there weren't like a lot of athletic threats. This one has schemers. It has crazy people. It has unpredictable people, and it's got athletic people. So like, it kind of really runs the gamut of what you want in a Survivor cast. It's a little bit of everything.
Yeah, I definitely think there are a lot of people with really big personalities this season. And I think for the most part, as I just look through the cast right now, we've already gotten kind of everyone has been involved in this story overall to this point, right? If you go from all of the remaining people left, right? Like if we just went through them quickly, right? Chanel, right? She has the whole narrative with Daniel and about how she's, according to Daniel, backstab her. Daniel is he's kind of been one of the lead characters throughout the course of the season, just through his way to kind of bumble throughout the episodes and cause chaos wherever he goes.
He would be great for my Survivor nonsense season. Like he's just a mess, like just a complete and utter paranoid mess.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about him for a little bit. So I guess what's interesting with him is that his approach when they came back to camp in episode 4, after everything that happened in episode 3, was that he was trying to be pretty much emphatic with the idea that it was Chanel's fault, everything that happened. Chanel, he did not backstab Mike or he did not backstab anyone, right? He ended up backstabbing everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And he essentially tried to tell Hai and Lynette, right? Is that the woman's name? Yeah, or Lydia. He tried to tell Hai and Lydia that he did not backstab them. And what happened was he was voting on Chanel's behalf because she didn't have a vote that night, which is absolutely insane. And he continued to try and say that throughout the entire course of that moment back at camp. And really through his actions, he did backstab everyone, because at this point he's alienated Mike, right? Mm-hmm. Mike has no desire to work with him at this point in time because he ended up going back on what he said he would do when they drew rocks. And Mike found out that Daniel told everyone else pretty much that he didn't have a vote, right?
Yeah.
Or he at least told Chanel, right? Mm-hmm. So, something that he thought would be kept private between them. Mm-hmm. And so what ultimately happens is Mike and Hai end up trying to come together to work something out. And it seems like Daniel is now on the outs, right? It seems like the tight group, at least from what the show showed us to this point, is that Hai, Mike, and Lydia are now working together, and the other two are on the outs. I think Daniel is in serious trouble.
He's in serious trouble, but he's also in an interesting spot because prior to episodes 3 Tribal Council, it was clear that Daniel was the swing vote. You had Hai and Lydia on one side, and then you had Mike and Chanel on the other. So Daniel really was the guy coming into episode 3's Tribal with the most power. And somehow he left with no power, really, which is astounding that you could do that. So to recap for people that maybe not know what's going on, much like season 41, they're doing new types of advantages that have serious consequences. So if you find a hidden immunity idol out in the jungle, it's not activated until all three people that find one on each tribe. So like tribe A, tribe B, tribe C, they all have to find it and they all have to activate it by saying a certain ridiculous nonsense phrase at the daily challenge, whatever. And then unless they all get to the merge and then the idols are active the moment they hit the merge.
Any of them. So if any of them get to the merge.
Yep. So you could potentially have 3 idols in play if they're all still there when they get to the merge. But the consequence is they cannot vote until the idol is active. So they either can't vote throughout the whole cycle until they get to the merge, or they have to activate these idols. So getting that idol is a huge disadvantage unless you're in a really good place politically. And with a tribe of, what was it, 6 is where they started? With a tribe of 6, correct, it's really hard to hide in a tribe of 6. Like you have to be involved.
I think they've really figured something out with the way, one, they've structured the season as far as the number of people, and then 2, some of the, for a lot of these, I don't even necessarily want to call them advantages. For the large part, I think they're almost disadvantages, hidden as advantages, right? So yeah, with the number of people, I think the 3 tribe format with 6 people, I think it really kind of pushes each vote to the point very early on. It kind of accelerates how important each vote is, right? Because like you said, every single person's vote matters. And then on top of that, once you start taking people's votes away, that makes the situation even more impactful, right? It really comes down to one person's vote can literally be like live or die for someone's life in the game.
Yep. And then let's not take away the fact from episode 3 as well. Chanel gets to go on the journey, which is also new from season 41 into 42. So they'll take a random tribes member that gets elected by the tribe or gets chosen by the tribe. They go off on a little journey. They go through this little path, and then they have the prisoner's dilemma. So you can both choose to, or all 3 of you can choose to keep your vote safe, or you can risk your vote. And if you all keep safe, you're in. If 2 of you risk your vote and 1 person is safe, then the 2 people get extra votes. However, if you all risk your vote, you all cannot vote at the next tribal. Well, Chanel went there with who? I forgot who she went with.
So when she went, she only went with one other person, right? Yeah. She went with Omar, right? And so they both decided to. This is one of the. I heard people talk about this on our app. I think Steven said this on our app, and I think I would probably agree. This is one of the all-time worst moves in the history of Survivor. So Omar decides that he wants to risk his vote because Chanel told him when they were on their journey up to like the side of the mountain that she desperately needed her vote that night, and there's no way she would risk her vote, right? What does she do? She goes down there and she risks her vote. And Omar, because of what Chanel told him about how she had to have her vote, decides he was going to risk his vote, right? Yep. So Chanel loses her vote in a situation where she absolutely has to have a vote, right? It's her, it's Daniel, and it's Mike, right? Mike doesn't have a vote.
Oh, so Chanel doesn't have a vote.
Yeah, right. So it's Chanel, Daniel, Mike, and Jenny. Jenny has a vote, Daniel has a vote, Mike does not, and Chanel does not, right? And so at that point, it's those 2 versus Hai and Lydia, right? And so Chanel comes back. She tries to talk them into splitting the vote. But what's ironic about this, and this is another point that I heard someone mention on our app, was that she didn't even need to talk them into doing that. Because what Hai wanted to do is he wanted to split the votes 3-1 anyway, right? And she comes back and she goes, no, we got to do it even. And so she could have just gone along with what he wanted to do in the first place, right? Do
no contention, everything happens, and nobody's mad at anybody.
Right? Like, so he has a confessional last week where it seems like his awareness is raised, and like it was pretty much just like a long narrative of him like pretty much like coming to the realization that he can't trust the 2 of them being Daniel and Chanel, and it pretty much blows up in Daniel's face. Let's talk about this episode more.
Yeah, so let's. I just wanted to give people the backstory because I feel like it's going to inform the rest of this conversation. So getting back to episode 4. Prior to episode 4, it was very clear that you had a side of Hai and Lydia and Mike and Chanel, and Daniel was kind of aligned with Mike and Chanel, but he was kind of bouncing. Like he was just looking for a place to land.
I don't know how close. Are you talking about prior to this episode?
Yeah, prior to episode 4. Now coming out of that episode 3 tribal, it's clear everybody does not trust him. Period.
Well, yeah, prior to like going into the episode 3 tribal council, Chanel and Daniel were like tight. Like they were pretty much tight. Jenny and Mike were really tight, and then there was Hai and Lydia that were really tight. I don't know how much of a relationship Chanel had with
Mike.
I think they were voting together, but I don't think that they were
they weren't close. Tight, but I'm saying what I mean by that is that they were not going to vote against each other at this time. At least at this time, they weren't. Correct. So coming in now to episode 4, it really seems like Daniel's just on the outs with everybody. If Hai and Mike are now forming some sort of an alliance to work together out of necessity, that kind of puts Lydia and Mike and Hai together, and at least Daniel and Chanel floating in the wind. Like Daniel screwed both him and Chanel with what he did.
I thought it was an interesting move that Daniel tries to come back from tribal council and says, I don't have it in me to talk tonight. Like, let's wait until tomorrow. It's like, what show do you think you're on?
Yeah, like he goes to bed and everybody else is talking.
Guess how old he was as of filming this?
25?
30. So I thought he was way older than 30. Too.
Oh, okay.
For whatever reason, I thought he was like mid late 30s for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, he looks older than he is. I mean, I think that's just some people that do that, you know, like what's his name on the challenges looked 50 forever.
Who?
God, I can't even remember his name now. Oh, I'm thinking of a pro wrestler, Arn Anderson. Arn Anderson has looked 40 even when he was 25, and he's 60 now and he still looks 40. It's weird. So
that conversation was interesting. So one of my favorite parts about the episode, the reward challenge lasted all of 3-4 minutes.
Maybe
it happened, and I thought this is absolutely incredible. The challenge should be taking notes right now.
The challenge should be taking notes, and they should also be like, we need to cast this guy like immediately.
Who?
Jonathan.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, he would be good for he's the exact type of person they want on the show.
Mm-hmm. And he's going to have a huge name coming out of this season of Survivor, that's for sure.
So the orange team wins. Taku, they get the fish. Back at camp. So the big thing that came out of that reward challenge was that Jonathan did make the mistake of saying that the Taku 4 was very strong and tight with each other. Omar and Marianne are upset about this. I think, yeah, it definitely puts a little bit of a target on them, but I think
the other tribes
huge of a deal.
Yeah, I think the other tribes know that. You know what I mean? I think that's just known at this point. Like those 4 are a great team, and they would be stupid to break up their alliance. Like even in the outside looking in on those other tribes, you know, they're looking at how strong that 4 is because they got rid of I wouldn't call them dead weight, but they definitely got rid of their anchors. Like they're a tight machine at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's definitely one thing for other people to perceive that strength, and then it's another thing to kind of tell them and give them ammunition.
Yeah.
For when some potential swap or merge happens. I don't know. I think it's unlikely that we're going to get a swap. We didn't get one last season. I feel like enough interesting content right now that I almost feel like if you do a swap, it kind of breaks up all the narratives that are going on. So
it will hurt this season if they just do a tribe swap. They need to let this play out till emerge. Like completely need to let this play out till emerge.
We finally got some content from the Blue Tribe this episode, from Ika. We hadn't gotten anything from them the last couple of episodes because Jenny was voted out in episode 3. Mariah was voted out in episode 2. Mm-hmm. And so it had been a long time before we got any significant content from them. Mm-hmm. Romeo has the moment with Roxroy, right? Where Roxroy is coaching him on how to make the fire. And he talks about how he's just going to let Roxroy think that he's in charge and really the entire time he's like pretty much saying like screw you Roxroy in his head.
Yeah.
I
Roxroy
think
is another one for the Survivor nonsense season. Like he and Coach on the same tribe would try to kill each other.
I think if we went down the list of people, Roxroy would be one of the few people that we could say definitively at this point has zero chance to win, right?
Yes, I mean, he's the guy you want to bring to the final three because no one's going to vote for him. Like, period. No one is going to even think about voting for Roxroy.
And when you look at the Edgic results coming out of episode 3, right? So the final final results for episode 3 for Edgic, he is dead last. Guess the last 2 people. You should be able to guess the last 3. I'm kind of surprised by the 4th. Well, so guess the last 3.
All right, I would say that it's Roxroy. It's probably going to be Lydia, and then it's probably going to be.
You're forgetting one really obvious one.
Yeah, I'm sure I am. I just haven't learned all these people's names yet.
Daniel.
I don't know. Daniel. No, he's at the bottom. Are you serious?
Dude, he's toast. There's no way he's going to win.
Well, he's not going to win, but I feel like he's getting a lot of screen time.
Yeah, but I don't think he's going to win.
No,
like, he's just no way, dude.
No.
Like everyone else, like at this point, like no one has like much respect for him as far as the game goes.
Yeah.
You know, like he's alienated all his close alliances and all the like everyone he's worked with, right?
I actually think at this point, Daniel would be the absolute person in dead last in terms of who could win, and then Roxroy. Because here's the thing. No one is going to want to take Daniel to the final 3 because you have no idea what he's going to do. So you want to get rid of him as soon as possible. Whereas Roxroy, he's annoying, he's abrasive, but you know he's not going to double cross you on a vote so far.
Yeah, and so I think that's one thing to be said for Roxroy, right? He's going to be very loyal. Mm-hmm. And we saw that this episode, right? He was the one person that voted for Swati. Mm-hmm. And that's why Swati decided to play her shot in the dark, right? Because I thought that was a good move. Like her vote really didn't matter at the end of the day, right? Because she knew Roxroy was going to vote for Tori, right? And so that's one vote for Tori. If Swati herself votes for Tori, that's 2 votes. And then Drea, and then Tori votes for Swati, right? It's 2-1 at that point. So either way, it pretty much comes down to what does Romeo do? What does Drea do? And that's why I think it's interesting that so far through the Edgic chart, through episode 3, they have Romeo 4th to last, which I don't get at all. I think he's in a great position. I think from an editing perspective, they're giving him a lot of visibility, and they're kind of allowing him to tell the audience what he's thinking about what's going on in the game. Yep. So I was kind of surprised to see that. I haven't followed Edgic as closely this season as I have in seasons past. So I would definitely be really interested to hear the logic about why they don't necessarily think Romeo is someone that could be in contention, especially after we've like barely seen the Blue Tribe the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think he is in the contention. And I also think that Edgic has not quite caught up to how they've edited the show in season 41. The Shan was far out ahead in Edgic last season, but Rob, I think you or Rob nailed it. I can't remember. One of you said Shan is either going to outright win this season or they're setting her up to get blindsided in an epic fashion. And it turns out she got blindsided in an epic fashion.
I don't think either of us had said that. I think what's going on is that I think it's possible that the editors are consciously aware of what people have been doing and have tried to move against that, right?
They're just editing the show with some red herrings now that are not quite as obvious.
There was pretty much no reason. There was not a lot given throughout the entire course of the season. There were at certain points for the ultimate winner to be shown in the way that a winner is typically.
Yeah, I would have never pegged her as the winner of the season last year. I knew she was going to make the final 3, but I would have not pegged her as the winner. So the fact that she won made me go, "Oh, they've caught on to Edgic now."
Yeah, and so Erica does end up winning season 41, and they don't edit her in a way that is satisfying for a lot of the people that watch the show in a very close way, right? Because there wasn't really I don't know. You'd really have to dig deep to kind of provide like a pretty good argument for why she won if you weren't, at least compared to other people and the way that they edited other people at the same time.
Like Vlachos on season 40, it was telegraphed episode 3 that Tony was winning that season. Like it was just so freaking obvious.
I mean, I think they had to do that for an all-winner season, right? They couldn't afford to have a very controversial winner coming out of that season. But getting back to season 42, right? I mean, pretty much the entire narrative around episode 4 for what happens with the Blue Tribe is that Swati talks to Lindsay, right? They're apparently close allies. They're 1-1. And or it's not Lindsay, Tori, excuse me. Swati talks to Tori. For whatever reason, I always want to call Tori Lindsay.
Yeah.
And I'm not necessarily sure why. But Swati talks to Tori and tells Tori about the advantage that Drea has, that she has the extra vote, right? And that's pretty much where chaos ensues, where Tori then goes to, Swati says that she wants to vote out Drea, who has an extra vote. Swati also talks about Roxroy and about how they need to bring in Roxroy if they want to be able to do anything, right? They need Swati, they need Roxroy, and they need Tori to work with each other. And Tori says that she doesn't really want to work with Roxroy, but she'll do it if it can essentially keep her from getting voted out in the game.
Yeah.
And so she goes to Roxroy and she pretty much talks about how she wants to work together. And Tori tells Roxroy about Drea's extra vote. And Roxroy doesn't know about this, right? This is news to him.
And Roxroy was not happy either.
So one, Roxroy isn't necessarily happy. And two, he doesn't want to work with Tori under any circumstance. This goes back to what you were saying earlier about Roxroy. He's very loyal. He doesn't see the point in working with Tori. And not only does he not see the point in working with Tori, he goes to Drea and tells Drea that he now found out that she has an extra vote and that she found this out from Tori. And so this is pretty much what crushes Swati, right? Like Swati's ultimate downfall was that she told Roxroy, or she told Tori that Roxroy had, or Drea has an extra vote, right?
Yep.
If she didn't tell that, she would essentially be able to deny everything from there on out.
She also
doesn't, and that's what ends her.
Yeah, there's another thing that ends her too. In previous seasons, you can get away politically with telling everybody in your tribe that they're your number one or a select group of people, because a lot of times if people weren't working together, they wouldn't talk. In these latest few seasons of Survivor, all the players, whether they're working with each other or not, at least talk some strategy on a tribal day. And when they all found out that Swati had told each of them, "You're my number one," that was really the extra knife in her, because you cannot do that anymore. You just can't. That is an asking to go home.
I don't know, dude, because like my thing is like, how often does that happen? And we just don't see that, right? And then you, like when you're talking with your number one, you can be like, "Oh, I'm telling them that they're my number one too, just to keep them on our side."
Well, that's what I think.
You're really my number one.
That's what the editing showed, though. She did not say to them, "You're my number one," but I'm going to tell all these people you're my number one. She just would have these conversations and say, "Yeah, you're my number one. I got you." Like that's the kicker. Maybe they didn't show her have that with her actual number one, but what they showed us was she just told everybody that.
Because coming out of, like, I remember Game Changers, for example, and I think she even did it to some degree in Winners at War. But like I remember coming out of Game Changers when Sarah wins, everyone was talking about how they thought Sarah was their best friend. You know, she had everyone thinking that like they were they were her number one, and she was on their side.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
I mean, I think there's a big difference between making people feel like you're their number one and just saying it. Like there's a big difference to me. And maybe I'm looking too far into this, but you can make everybody feel like they're your number one, but you can't just go around willy-nilly throwing it around. Like you actually have to earn that. You can't just say it.
I get what you're saying. I would be really curious to know how often how often people do that, right? Tell like a large number of people that like they're number one. And I bet it happens a lot.
It might. It
And
really
but
might.
and then I would want to know how often people come together and that type of exchange happened, right?
Mhm.
Because like we saw that happen. Like this is honestly one of the few times I can ever think of that happening, right? In
Mhm.
42 seasons, I can't think of many times where they've shown that on TV, and it has to have happened, right? Like it
Mhm.
has to happen a lot. And I feel like one of the reasons why they showed it is because Swati ultimately goes home this episode,
Mhm.
right? So it's definitely important for that. That was one of the main reasons why she goes home, and we can talk about that in a little bit. But and I guess to go along with that, kind of what that also reminds me of is Jeremy, how he talks about someone. I don't remember how the topic came up, but like shaking like hands on something, like when you make an alliance with someone. Like he talked about how he would like never like shake hands with someone. And that it kind of like goes along with what you said, right? Because like you never want to like overcommit, right? Because like if you
Mhm.
overcommit and then have to at the end of the day go back against what you told that person, that's going to hurt a lot more for them
Yeah. And even
because
if
you've
you
formed
make
that
it
close of a bond.
Yeah, and if you make it to the final three, people on the jury are going to be hesitant to vote for you because you went too far in your deal making. You know what I mean? Like it just people take some of that personally. And regardless of what anybody says, the last few seasons of Survivor, they take seriously voting someone to win who they felt deserved it. However, if they feel you deserve it, but they can't stand you as a person, or they feel like you backstab too many people, they won't do it either. Like you have to find that gray line of making strategic decisions without burning bridges. And that's really hard to do.
All right. So immunity challenge, shocker, Orange crushes it. It's not even really close. I think they
Jonathan's a
tried.
beast, man. Like he basically swam that thing himself.
How tall do you think he is?
I'd say he's
If you
six
had to guess,
two, 6'2".
I think he's a little taller
Yeah. I think
because
he's
you know
from around here too. They've
Gulf
been
Shores.
Yeah, he's from Mobile. Yeah. So he's from the southern part of Alabama because they've been having all kinds of local articles on like the local blog sites and local newspaper blog sites about him. Like, here's where Jonathan is this week in Survivor. So I figured he had to be from around here.
They do not have it listed.
I mean,
It's
he's
because like
clearly taller than most of the people on
yeah,
the show this season.
I think all of the people. So that's the thing. Like for me, it's like he's. It's not only that like you can tell he's the tallest. He's like noticeably taller than everyone else.
He's the
Um,
guy this season, based on his performance thus far. If he makes it to the merge, which it's very likely he will if they keep winning these dailies, these challenges, whatever you want to call them. Whenever he gets to the merge, he's going to have to run the table to win the show
yeah,
because he is going to get voted out in a merge as soon as humanly possible.
yeah. Like I mean, the best thing that could happen for Jonathan at this point is he like sprains an ankle. That's like best case scenario for him.
Yeah.
And then it lowers his visibility and people think he's less of a threat,
Yeah.
right? That's the best thing that could happen to him because exactly what you said right before the merge or right when they get to the merge, everyone is incentivized to get him out.
Mm-hmm. He's got a
So
tough row, man. He's things are going to have to fall perfectly for him to win, which is why I think Survivor is the perfect show for him to launch his reality career if that's what he wants to do. He really should be on the challenge because that really is where he'll find a longer reality TV career because they'll put him on every season because he's got a good personality, he's an attractive dude, and he's competitive. Like that is like when you build a challenger, Jonathan is what you imagine for like the perfect person to be on the challenge.
I mean, so his political awareness, right, could probably, at least from what we've seen so far, could use some work. But as far as overall his like competition ability, from what we've seen through 4 episodes, right? How many people would you take ahead of him on the challenge?
Not
Like not
many,
a lot,
man.
right?
Like, yeah, like we really haven't seen him do a puzzle. So maybe you
Correct.
could argue CT, but That might be it. You know what I mean? Like, I would say Jonathan, as what we've seen thus far, I would rank him ahead of Jordan. I would rank him ahead of Bananas. I would definitely rank him ahead of Wes, just from a size perspective. So, like, I think CT is the only person that really matches up with him physically. And CT gets the edge just because we haven't seen Jonathan do a puzzle. He lets his other tribe mates do that.
So getting back to the immunity challenge, Orange pulls way ahead. It's not even close. Jonathan is crushing it as usual. They're far out ahead. They swim through the mission, and I thought it was interesting that once the green team made a point, or once they finally made it to the dock where they put together their puzzle, I thought it was very interesting that they showed Hai and Mike pretty much like tell each other like good job, and that they crushed it, right? So I definitely think that's a sign that we're going to see a situation in the near future where they potentially work with each other, right? I definitely think that was intentional, that was put in the show.
Completely.
Green comes back from the dead, though. I wonder really how much editing nonsense came into play here, where they made it seem like Ika and Vati, the blue and the green tribe. I wonder how much they edited to make it look like they were closer to Taku, the orange team, right? Because orange team clearly won. They had a big lead. But then what it comes down to one piece for the green team that they beat the blue team by. Chanel puts it in, and she, I thought it was, props to her. She was pretty much like telling everyone, calm down, as she put the last piece in, because it really could have gone either way, right?
It really could have.
One thing goes in the wrong direction, they lose. Their green team's going back to tribal. And I don't know. So who would you have rather seen go to tribal here, right? Like, what would have been the more interesting vote to see what happens with the green team after everything?
Yes, no question. I want to see the green team in, because Daniel would be flipping out, causing all kinds of chaos. Mike's going to be mad. Hai's not going to trust Daniel. Lydia's going to blow whichever way the winds go that keeps her around another week. And then Chanel is also going to be scrambling, because I have a feeling Mike, even though they probably had a tenuous relationship at best in terms of their voting block, I think because Daniel kept saying in that tribal, I was voting on behalf of Chanel. I was voting on behalf of Chanel because she didn't have a vote. I think that screwed her just royally, just terribly bad.
How does he think that's going to work? You know what I mean? Like,
it's
no one believes that, dude.
No. And he's supposed to be a lawyer. Like, he should know better than to make an argument that has no solid legal ground.
Chanel calls him out on it, right? She's like, Daniel, everyone's supposed to believe that you, as someone who is quote unquote a super fan, an expert of the game, is actually going to think that you have no agency in this vote, that you're just giving me your agency.
Daniel's best move, because Mike and Chanel didn't have a vote, his best move would have been just to vote Mike out. Like, quite frankly, I think that was the move he should have done, because he could have had Lydia and Hai on board immediately, and Chanel would have been like, all right, y'all do that. That would have been the easiest vote they could have ever done.
Well, it could have only been Jenny or Lydia. The two people that could have gone.
Or Mike.
Been Jenny or Lydia.
Mike can still go. He just can't vote.
No, at that point, I'm talking about like after they had already voted.
Oh, after they already voted. I meant before you even voted. Like before you get to tribal. I really feel like if Daniel really wanted to cement himself as a leader in the game, he could have taken over that tribe by just getting Lydia and Jenny and Hai together and saying, here's the deal. Chanel and I know Mike can't vote right now. And I also know that Chanel could potentially lose her vote. So let's take control of the game and vote one of them out. That would have been the safest thing for Daniel to do.
Jenny would have never done that, because she was Mike's number one.
But so here's what's great. He could have left Jenny out of the conversation.
I know,
because
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So he doesn't need to do that, right? So you're essentially just saying he should have gone with Hai and Lydia to begin with.
Yes.
Right? Like, that's what you're saying.
Yes. And then you tell Chanel, hey, since you potentially can't vote, we need to do the safest thing that's going to cause the least amount of waves. and me and you can still work together. But for this vote, we get rid of Mike. We get rid of that idol that's an anchor in our sails, and we keep Lydia and Hai thinking we're all working together. And it satisfies every party in that tribe. And the only person that's upset, that's Mike, but he's gone home and he's not on the jury. So that would have been the strategic play.
So what I'm more curious is, after they already, all the votes have happened, right? Daniel and Hai have to come to a unanimous decision. I think the worst thing he could have said there is, I am not going to Roxanne under any circumstance.
Yes.
Right. You lose all your leverage at that point. It's all right, well, I guess Hai in his mind should have been thinking, all right, I guess I'm getting my way then, because I am willing to go to Rox. That's all you have to say, right?
Yep.
The moment you say that you're not willing to go to Rox, you lose.
Yep. He's a lawyer. He should know this. You never give away your leverage. If you have leverage, you keep those cards close to your vest. You never reveal what leverage you have until you actually have to use it. And so his leverage was Rox. He could have scared Hai into thinking of, all right, I'll draw Rox. Well, the moment that he said he wouldn't go to Rox, Hai, like you said, well, I guess I'm going to get my way, because I'm just going to sit here and I'm willing to go to Rox. And at that point, it's like, well, that's what's going to happen. Daniel's going to have to vote your way. Sorry.
Dude, I almost think his best move there is to go to Rox, right? Because at this point, I think that's the only way he can get everyone else back on his side, right?
Yeah.
Because that's it. And so
if he didn't do my strategy, yes. If he didn't do my strategy, that's his only way out when he's in that situation, is to go to Rox.
What you're saying is essentially he should just work with Hai and Lydia. And I don't think it really matters at that point. If he's working with Hai and Lydia, I don't think it matters whether they vote Jenny or Mike. I really don't think it makes a difference. At that point, he's just working with Hai and Lydia.
Well, it does make a difference, because Mike and Jenny are tight, and Mike is going to be a bigger threat to him than Jenny. So to me, I feel like you have to go Mike. If you're pre-tribal, this only works pre-tribal. You fill Chanel in on the idea. She can't vote, so she's probably going to go, okay, if we're number ones and we're tight, I see your logic. Go do that. You go to Hai and Lydia and you say, this is what we're going to do. It's 3 votes to 1, because these other 2 can't vote. So you don't piss anybody off. Jenny might be upset, but if she understands that it was Mike or her, she's grateful that it was Mike and not her. So it was the right thing to do, except he didn't do that. And then when he's sitting there with Hai one-on-one, you're absolutely right. He has to go to Rox at that point.
I don't know. I don't think that they necessarily showed Daniel being him having any type of relationship with Jenny. I don't know, if they ever showed a one-on-one conversation with them, whereas for all intents and purposes, it did seem like he had a pretty good relationship with Mike. Mm-hmm. And so I think
he did, but the way it all played out, he destroyed it. So maybe there was another way to do it without destroying it, but it seems like that was harder than just getting rid of the headache to me.
All right, so let's get back to
episode 4 again.
After this challenge, after the immunity challenge, back at Ika, Roxroy is of course upset they lost. He thinks it's a time to eliminate Tori because she can't be trusted. And Romeo brings up with Tori that this is a one-on-one conversation. This is pretty much where everything falls in place for what happens with the vote. It starts with this. And this is why I think Romeo's in a good position, right?
He's why I think Romeo might win.
Yeah. I think at this point, if I had to say someone that I thought was going to win, I'd probably pick Romeo, right? Mm-hmm. He was pretty much the one pulling the strings on all this. Mm-hmm. And it comes from this conversation. Romeo has the conversation with Tori where they talk about how Tori told Roxroy that she wanted a 3 to, or Romeo brings up the fact that Tori told Roxroy that she wanted a 3 to be Roxroy, herself being Tori, and Swati. And Tori said that she only wanted to do that because Swati told Tori that she was going to be on the outs. And Romeo thinks to himself, why is Swati telling Tori this, right? That was our plan. She's pretty much revealing our plan to Tori and trying to ruin what was going on. Mm-hmm. And he finds out that Swati was the one that told Tori about Drea having the extra vote, right? Mm-hmm. And so Romeo goes to talk to Drea. He says that he thinks that Swati is the one causing all the trouble and that they need to get rid of Swati, right? Then after that, Swati, Romeo, and Drea talk about or not Drea, Swati, Romeo, and Tori. This is the conversation that we talked about earlier in this podcast episode, where Swati has told all three of them that they're their number one, right? And they edit it. The editors do a great job with this.
Perfect.
They do a lot of flashbacks in this episode, and I think it really kind of helps tell the story a little bit, where the editors literally go back and go to the moment where Swati tells each of them how they're their number one, or she is their number one, and she wants to be that person for them. And Tori says that Romeo and Drea want to get her out, and it's literally the start of the episode. One of the first first scenes that we have is Drea and Swati, or not Drea and Swati, Tori and Swati talking about how they want to work with each other and they want to get Drea out. And it has literally come to full circle at this point. And now Swati is the one on the chopping block. She is the one that could potentially go home. And Swati picks up on this. She sees that all of this is pretty much going against her. I think she knows that she's probably going home. I think she can tell that the tides have turned. She has a conversation with Romeo about like what's going on right now. And she goes to Drea and has a conversation about how it does seem like everything is kind of turned against her. And it comes down to what Drea and Romeo want to do at the end of the day. That's all that matters as we go into tribal.
Yep. Pretty much you nailed all of that. I have no further comment because you nailed it.
Okay. So we get to tribal. We talked about, we've pretty much hit on everything that happened at tribal already, right? Swati and Tori take turns throwing each other under the bus, which you have to do for them.
You have to, but it was like, especially from Swati's standpoint, she made herself look worse on the way out the door. You know what I mean? Like she really, like Tori she's a therapist, and so she was using some of that reverse psychology type stuff that a lot of, strategic thinkers do, who you also don't trust, because I don't particularly think I would trust Tori. But at the same time, the rest of the tribe had way less trust in Swati after all the events that occurred.
So,
because everything Swati accused Tori of, she was guilty of. Like, Swati was guilty of everything she accused Tori of in that tribal.
And I think, I don't necessarily think Swati came out of this looking bad. I actually thought she defended herself pretty well at tribal council. What it really comes down to too, right? So I said that it comes down to Drea and Romeo, but what it also comes down to as well is that Roxroy was pretty much not willing to budge whatsoever off the fact that he was going to vote with Tori. And his unwillingness to consider anyone else is pretty much what crushed Swati, right? Because for all intents and purposes, he seemed very close with Swati, right? But if he's not willing to vote for anyone else beside Tori, Swati and Tori cannot work with each other, right? That's what it came down to from early in the episode. But Swati plays her shot in the dark. Correct move, right? Especially
knowing all the circumstances she was now under. That was her only chance to get out, because the only person that was going to vote her way was Roxroy.
So the last thing I think we should talk about here is this the right move for Romeo and Drea? Should they have voted out Swati? Because think about it, right? Think about it now, right? What Roxroy? Well, it seems like Roxroy is probably going to be with them regardless, right? I don't really know if this changes much for Roxroy. So they still have the numbers in the tribe, and it seems like that. My thing with Tori is, I don't know. I guess I don't know if it really changes much for them, right? Because it seems like Tori and Swati, they were going to do regardless of whatever it took to get them farther in the game, right? Both of them. It didn't really matter. I don't think Tori is necessarily indebted to them now. And I think Roxroy is with them either way.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much this changes.
I don't think it changes much of anything, because you're going to get another crack at getting rid of Tori, because I don't think that she's someone you can work with long-term just based on what we've seen this season. But Swati was a bigger threat because she was revealing too much information to the wrong people, and then going around telling everybody they're your number one without really demonstrating it or really building a bond, just saying it. Her age, she's like, what, 19 or 20? She's pretty young. She's 19. Really young, 19. And I think that she had a good strategy, but she didn't have the maturity yet to execute it effectively. And so because of that, she was the smarter choice this week. And if they go back to tribal, I think it's chalk that Tori's gone.
All right. So what we're going to do here, the last thing that we're going to do is we close out. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick one person that we each think is we're going to do our winner pick.
Mm-hmm.
But then we're also each week that we do this. I have no idea how often
we have no many idea. We could go 3 weeks before we do another Survivor episode. This is just we're doing this there's nothing really good in the challenge world to talk about right now until we get to All Stars. So this is what we're doing for the moment.
So we're also going to pick someone that we do not think is going to win. But this week we will pick 2 people that we do not think will win.
I think this is chalk, man. Daniel and Roxroy are not winning.
Yeah. So let's do 3, right? So Daniel is not going to win. Roxroy is not going to win. Who would your third person be that you do not think is going to win?
Lydia.
I think it's either Lydia or Tori, right? Mm-hmm. Because it seems like people. So like if Tori were Tori is in a perfect position to make it all the way to the end and get no votes is what she is, right? Because people don't have respect for that type of game, right? She's not making any decisions here, or at least that's the way that the editors are portraying it to us, right? Yeah. So I think those 4, right, we can say are not going to win.
Yeah, I think Tori has a path, but her path to winning is to backstab her tribe and work with the other 2 at the merge.
And so that's the thing, though. People don't respect that. At that point, then Romeo and Drea, they're not going to vote for her. Like she just flew onto some other coattails. You know?
And I think Lydia has the same issue, but Lydia could also potentially win even if she does nothing, because you have a situation there where as long as she pisses no one off and she finds a way to get to the final 3, if she's sitting there with Daniel and Roxroy somehow, like she has a path. Whereas Daniel and Roxroy have 0 path. Lydia's path is so skinny, though, that the game would literally have to fall into her lap perfectly. And I just don't see that happening with this cast. This cast is not going to let someone skate by that is going to somehow sneak this thing out. It's just not going to happen.
And then winner pick, I don't know, dude. I think Romeo's in a really good spot. There may be some obvious reason that I could read or hear like 2 minutes from now that someone tells me or that I see on Edgic and I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. He's not going to win. Yeah. But I think based off of the fact that we haven't seen the Blue Tribe really, we haven't seen, what is it, Ika? We haven't seen Ika the last 2 weeks. I don't know. I think like he's in a pretty decent spot here.
I think Romeo's in the best spot. Yes. If you were to ask me, you can only pick one, I would pick Romeo. But as a second place person, I think you could make a case for High. I think that you could make a case for it because he did not piss anybody off with how that episode 3 tribal went. And now that he's aligning himself with Mike and he's got Lydia, who's borderline useless, if they can stay tight all the way to the end and you have to pick between Mike, High, and Lydia, I think High would get the votes.
So on the subreddit for Edgic, the number 1 person that they have by like a decent amount is Omar, which I think is interesting.
No.
I don't know. I don't think he's necessarily done anything.
We just haven't seen enough yet. That's my thing. Like, we can't really make any determination with his current visibility level. They haven't portrayed him poorly. They also haven't portrayed him as like someone who's ahead of the curve on decisions. So anyway.
And then number 2, they have Jonathan, which I don't see at all.
Yeah.
Well, and you have to remember that this is before this latest episode.
Yeah.
So, all right, we're done. Thank you for listening, everyone, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye.